First person to guess correctly what band and song title the rhythm that I just made with my teeth belongs to wins a free copy of a CD I released several years ago. So answer in the comments below. Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Zach here with secretsoflongevity.com. Teeth are something that a lot of people take for granted, the health of their teeth. You know, we do all sorts of things with diet. Some people are way less conscientious of what they eat, and then one day you end up perhaps at the dentist and you find out you have 1 cavity, 2 cavities, in some people's cases up to 10 cavities or more. Yet we don't have as much of an awareness of what's going on in our mouths unless we have that really intense pain that it's so excruciating that we have to have something done right away. So the teeth, obviously, people know a lot about them, that they're bone, the hardest bones in our body, and unlike the common held belief that you have teeth and then they're there and you want to take care of them because they're not regeneratable, they're completely regeneratable. If you can break a bone and have the bone refuse back together with a cast, why can't your teeth do the same thing? So there's extreme examples of people chipping a tooth and regrowing enamel and stuff in that area, people regrowing lost adult teeth, people reversing cavities. Now definitely those first two are more extreme, but the third thing wasn't as extreme, the reversing cavities. I've personally done it myself. I don't have the dental records to show you, but I'm sure at some point I might try and get those, because I actually had x-rays done which showed a cavity that was definitely in the early stages, but then I actually reversed it when I first went raw. Surprisingly, most people get cavities when they go raw, but for me, in that situation, it reversed, but that's probably because I was doing zero sugar raw food at the time. Now, I've done videos on reversing cavities in the past. This is kind of a part 4 to a series I did, I guess, over a year ago now. Actually, that would be September 2010 I did this, so you can check out this series here if you want to look at my recommendations then, and I'll talk about how they've changed now. The major thing being that last spring when I added meat back into my diet, a big influence in making that decision was the work of Ramiel Nagel. So definitely look his name up anywhere online, whether it's on his website or other videos he has. His channel you can check out here is Your Return, and he's really sort of compiled all the thoughts and research Dr. Weston Price did, that the Weston A. Price Foundation has been doing, and put it into one sort of format in his book. Definitely check out that book if you're interested in getting more in depth than I'm just getting in here. He's got a lot more dietary recommendations than I'm going to be able to fit in this video. But essentially, the biggest factors are we need to return to diets that are high in fat-soluble nutrients, specifically fat-soluble vitamins, so A, D, E, and K. These are found largely in animal foods, and the issue isn't that they don't exist at all in plant foods, because you can find trace amounts of some of them, although except for vitamin A is not in any plant foods in its form of retinol. You can get beta-carotene in plant foods, but never vitamin A in its final stage form. And there's plenty of studies that corroborate the problems that a lot of people, more than half of the population of most people, have with converting beta-carotene, that base form of vitamin A, up to retinol, which is what our body uses. Beta-carotene is a great antioxidant that we use for various disease preventative things in our bodies. So I'm not saying you don't want to consume beta-carotene or other carotenoids. They're great for many things, but they shouldn't be relied upon as your only source of vitamin A, because some people can't convert it at all. Some people don't do it with enough regularity that they get enough of that final stage vitamin A. It's kind of the same issue with omega-3s. A lot of people don't have the enzymatic activity or the right type of enzymes to be able to convert short-chain omega-3s to the longer DHA and EPA omega-3 fatty acid chains. That aside, basically, if we were to talk about quantities of these fat-soluble vitamins, when you go on a vegetarian or vegan diet, they're vastly diminished. And when you have animal foods in your diet that are pasture-raised, that's the key. To get enough of these, you have to have pasture-raised animal foods, pastured eggs, raw pastured dairy, and or pastured meat and wild seafood. So the nutrients that are available in these foods that these animals are eating gets concentrated in their fat tissue or in the fat in their dairy, and that's what generates a more yellowish color to grass-fed or pasture-raised animal foods. And also with the yolks, they're much more golden yellow in color than the factory farm grain-fed chickens. And that's a very important factor that you have to take into consideration when assessing how optimal your diet is for your bone health as well as your teeth health. So if you have teeth problems going on, it's most likely that your bone health isn't up to a standard of excellence that's going to be good for your long-term health. So when you have problems in any part of your mouth, with your teeth, even with your gums, there's many things that come into play. The number one factor is going to be in reducing sugars and basically these foods, processed foods that are very low in nutrients and not high enough in the fat-soluble vitamins and also essential minerals that get pulled by the vitamins and deposited in the teeth and bones, so inlaid into that matrix. Another thing to take into consideration is the best thing for building bones, in a large part, even more so than diet, is actually weight-bearing exercise. So people who have a terrible diet, if they're working out with weights, they can actually have really good bones. So a good thing to be doing is to make sure you're using your teeth in various ways. Whether it's actually eating some foods that are tough and need chewing. You know, a lot of people who end up going in certain dietary directions can sometimes get stuck into the pure liquid type diet or drinking all these juices, etc. And there's plenty of plant juices that are beneficial for the body and mineralization, especially green juices. But you also want to be engaging the muscles in the jaw, which increase bone density in the jaw, increase bone density in the teeth, or the mineralization of the teeth, and that's one way to help inlay and draw minerals and blood flow to the jaw area. So you either use it or lose it. If you don't want to be using your teeth, that's when they're going to start deteriorating away. Now, the sugar in many things also causes the growth of bacteria in the mouth. This is one place where I do disagree with Romuald Nagel. He's very adamant about the idea of what we take in into our digestive tract is what influences the health of our teeth, and that's definitely true. But he's also of the frame of mind that we can ignore sort of the effect of things on the mouth directly. So sugars, the idea is that certain bacteria eat sugars, simple sugars, and those bacteria leave acidic waste products that corrode the teeth. And that, I feel, has been pretty strongly demonstrated, and that's why certain foods that also inhibit bacteria growth in the mouth, like raw chocolate, even cooked chocolate, red wine, and also xylitol can be very good at preventing cavities. I wouldn't say they're the best things for reversing cavities unless you have a diet that's doing the reversing. They're just inhibiting the growth of those certain strains of bacteria. So there's basically 4 food groups that Weston A. Price talked about including in your diet to increase the mineralization of your teeth and actually rebuild cavities, rebuild chipped, broken teeth. Oddly enough, when I first started drinking raw grass-fed milk over a year ago, I had a filling that came out. I have 4 fillings on the upper side of my one row of teeth, and my intention is over time to reverse those fillings and fill the bone in, the tooth enamel and flesh of the tooth. Maybe it's going to happen completely, maybe it'll happen partially, whatever happens. My intention is to not have to get these refilled. But down the road, if it was causing me problems, then yes, I'd get them filled with something that was ideally like porcelain or even quartz crystal, but not the composites, not the mercury for sure, and the gold isn't that optimal either. So again, those 4 food groups are going to be grass-fed dairy products. A certain amount can work for some people, tons can work for some people, and some people just can't have any at all, even if it's raw and has that lactase enzyme intact. But one way around that is to go more towards the fermented side of things, the raw hard cheeses, which the fermented dairy has higher amounts of vitamin K2 in it, which is good for building the tooth enamel, the dentin, bone structure, and helping mineralize these areas of the body. If you want to learn more about raw dairy, I'm not going to get too involved into it in this video. You can check out this video here that I made a while back that is the longest video on my channel, but it's also really well researched, and that'll give you the full down low on the benefits of raw grass-fed dairy and why it's superior to all other forms of dairy, and you should not consume pasteurized dairy or grain-fed factory farm dairy, etc. The next food group is going to be pasture-raised animal meats. So including these in your diet is going to be beneficial for adding those fat-soluble nutrients, A, D, E, and K. You'll notice the fat on grass-fed beef, for instance, has a bit more of a yellow tinge to it than factory-farmed meat. So yes, you're still going to get some of these fat-soluble nutrients from mainstream meat sources, but it's going to be much higher concentrations in pasture-raised animal foods, and these are what these animals are designed to eat. It's also got the mineralization factor in there, the zinc, etc., which is very beneficial for health as well. Then you're going to have the seafoods. There can be certain types of seafoods that you find these unique, almost not properly understood compounds, which Weston Price called Factor X, which most people are understanding as vitamin K2 at this point, and that again in sufficient quantities is beneficial to mineralization of the teeth. The last category, of course, is going to be the organ meats of pastured animals. So that's going to be like beef liver, chicken liver, heart, and many of these other things. And an example of that is here. I got a grass-fed beef heart not too long ago, and I made heart jerky. So with my dehydrator, that was for raw foods, I sliced up the beef heart and made strips of beef heart jerky. And I added a few spices and things, and it's very delicious, and I use it as snacks. It's great for making jerky because it's so lean. There's very little fat in there, but tons of minerals, and the minerals are great for many things. And so without the fat on there when you're making jerky, it's going to last longer because the fats won't go rancid, and it'll have a longer shelf life. So there's a wide range of different organs that are beneficial: brain, tongue, eyeballs, and other things. It's going to make some people squeamish, but it's just a reality of what we used to eat, or our ancestors ate, and what brings us the most vitality of nutrition. So these things are somewhat more minimal in the diet, obviously, compared to the more abundant flesh that will be on an animal. If you were to imagine that you were to slaughter an animal or catch a wild animal, you'd have much more of the muscle meat that you'd be eating, but you're still getting a decent amount of organ meats in there into your diet per animal that you ate. So if we want to kind of mimic that ratio that we take in, we don't need to eat massive quantities of organ meat. In fact, there's some nutrients you don't want to overdo that with, but there is a lot of myths about overdosing on vitamin A and things. Talking specifically about an Arctic expedition where there's a lot of people quote someone overdosing on polar bear liver, or maybe it was dog liver. That's just not true, because the actual accounts of that guy was, this guy was vegetarian, and he was actually getting this shock of overdosing on so-called nutrients from eating the meat even of the animal. So even before he was eating the liver, he was getting these toxic effects because they ran out of canned food, and he was eating the meat. I believe it was polar bear that they shot or something, and he died from going suddenly from a long-term vegetarian diet and eating just pure meat. So the other guy on the trip had been omnivorous and had done fine going into the stage of eating more meat, but the other guy who was vegetarian could not handle it. So it was not a vitamin A toxicity issue. So don't be too concerned about that. When you're getting a range of foods in your diet and getting a balance of vitamin A and vitamin D in your diet, you're going to have a good balance which prevents vitamin A toxicity. And a lot of the vitamin A toxicity studies are actually done on isolated vitamin A. So again, our traditional diets were around 10 times higher in fat-soluble vitamins, around 4 times higher in various minerals than processed food diets, and even in some cases the so-called healthy diets that are vegetarian and vegan, that are really missing a lot of these key nutrients. Now some people do make the point that yes, you can get these in certain plant foods, but it's not about whether you can get them or not, it's about quantities. If you get only X amount of vitamin K, for instance, from a variety of plant foods, but in animal foods there's 10 times that amount, and you can only eat so much of these different plant foods, and there's also the absorbability factor, you're going to be getting the optimal amount when you're eating the food that is the richest in it, if that is what we're designed to do. And it turns out we are. So we need these things, we need them for good strong teeth and strong bones, and that is essentially the recommendations on how to reverse cavities and rebuild enamel and dentin of your teeth using diet. So the protocol I'm going to follow myself for the next month, starting in February, there's going to include a few supplements as well as dietary things. I'm just going to outline it and put it out there for anyone that wants to sort of emulate that in their own life. You can definitely tailor this to your own needs, but it's very important to understand these key concepts. And everyone's different. Dietary needs vary depending on the ratio of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates people take in and feel optimal on. For me, a fairly low carbohydrate diet works best. For other people, they need a little bit more. For some people, it needs to be high carbohydrate and low in the animal foods, in which case, that's totally fine. You just need to know how to prepare those foods properly so that they're not leaching minerals for your body and that you're actually getting the best quality ones for adding what minerals and nutrients you do need. So the number one thing is I'm taking out all grains. I don't consume grains much at all. Once in a while I use like Ezekiel wraps or Ezekiel bread, which is sprouted grains. I'm going to cut those out. They still haven't been processed in the traditional way, which is fermenting them. If you were to consume grains like wild rice, brown rice, any type of grain that ideally wouldn't have gluten in it, so quinoa, you want to start fermenting it. So one way to do this is put in a bowl the amount of grain you're going to use the next day, 24 hours from now, because you have to do this 24 hours in advance. Fill it so that it's covered with water and there's a sufficient amount of water above the level of the grains. And you put 2 to 3 tablespoons or even 4 tablespoons of a large quantity of apple cider vinegar. It has to be unpasteurized apple cider vinegar, and you just leave that out on the counter to ferment. The probiotics in the apple cider vinegar prevent the addition of negative bacteria that's going to make it ferment and go bad, and it's going to add the good bacteria that also helps the fermentation process, which eliminates a lot of the anti-nutrients that would pull essential minerals out of your body because of the phytic acid. So the soaking, and then you rinse it 24 hours from then, drain that off, and then cook it. So I'm not recommending the use of raw grains. You could even sprout them and then cook them. So in that process, you want to sprout things first, then ferment them, then cook them. That is definitely very laborious. They're going to sprout a little bit by the soaking, but it's not essential that you sprout everything. Again, I'm not recommending the use of the grains and the beans, but if you're the type of person that definitely needs higher carbohydrates in the diet, I'd recommend getting that from fermented grains, from root vegetables, specifically the lower glycemic ones like yams, and trying to minimize the fruit, going on the lower glycemic fruits. But in my case, I'm cutting out all grains, all beans, and all fruit for the next month. I might occasionally have a sweet potato here and there, but generally I'm going to get all my calories from fat and protein. So the next thing is to add in the foods that build on these fat-soluble nutrients. So the macronutrients are going to be from the meat, dairy, seafood, and even some things like properly soaked and sprouted nuts and seeds. Very minimally. I don't use a whole lot of them. I prefer things like macadamia nuts, which are much higher in the monounsaturated fats and low in the polyunsaturated fats. Definitely don't want to be overdoing the PUFAs. And also there's the avocados and olive oil and coconut oil, things like that, coconut products that offer some other plant fats that are beneficial without going overboard on the polyunsaturated fats. But yeah, the animal foods are the staples. And then they're also looking at certain key supplements to add in very concentrated forms of these fat-soluble nutrients that are going to be good for my teeth. Not that I'm having any problems, I'm just not going to a dentist at the moment because of financial reasons, so I want to be doing everything possible to rebuild my teeth. And specifically through the fall, I didn't have the most optimal diet. I'm not going to go into details, but there were times when I was consuming things that would have been detracting to the overall beneficial building of my teeth. So I'm going to look at reversing any potential problems that went on there. That thankfully haven't shown any negative side effects, but I'm just doing this as a precautionary measure. So the 2 top things that Weston A. Price recommended in combination that added some very beneficial things, one being the X factor nutrient in very high quantities that was found in specifically this combination, is adding in butter oil as well as fermented cod liver oil. So you can get these 2 products at the links below. They also have blends of the 2 together, so you don't have to take 2 separate things. These are both in liquid. Obviously this is solid at fridge temperature. This is liquid at fridge temperature, but you take only like half a teaspoon of each every day. You can do a little bit more if you feel like you need it, but this is a great source of EPA and DHA, of course. It also has vitamins A and D, and the D is made bioavailable by the special fermentation process. And the butter oil is a very unique product, and I've been researching it a bit lately, and there's a lot of sort of online controversy about whether ghee, grass-fed ghee, is any different. Turns out that the butter oil is a raw product. I don't know how they're getting around USDA and food standards with that, but somehow there's raw dairy product on the market, and it's actually been concentrated down, so even though it seems expensive for the quantity of it, you're only having to use a very, very small amount of it. Whereas with a ghee, which is a butter oil in a sense, you're having to use extremely high quantities of it to get the same amount of nutrients and concentration that you would get from the butter oil. However, they have such a good process with that because they're only getting the milk fat that they make their butter from grass-fed cows grazing at that unique time when the grass is growing at its most rapid rate in the late spring. So they've taken that, concentrated the butter down, and then had a special extraction process to get this very thick golden yellow liquid out of it that is extremely building to the teeth. And I just started on this product yesterday. And I don't usually talk about my spirituality, however, this experience I had was so profound that I've never actually gotten from health food products. I've had things happen that could be called spiritual in nature from taking certain herbs and certain supplements, but this was definitely a step beyond anything I'd had happen. So I was at a health food store and I took a little bit of this in my mouth. I was just hanging out there, and it was a snowstorm here in Canada. The sun hadn't been out all day. I was looking out at the parking lot, and as I put this in my mouth and let it sort of melt, because it was a little bit solid, there was literally a parting of the clouds, and this golden light like shone down onto the parking lot, and I just got these shivers running up my back just as this stuff hit my tongue and was swishing it around. And I swallowed it, and within 15-30 seconds the clouds closed up again and the sun was not out again for the rest of the day. So for me, experiences like that are that dramatic and coincidental, and certain things also just lined up in my life with multiple people asking me about the product too. That really gives me a good sign that this is something that is right for me in this moment, and that's why I'm recommending its use. Has a very mild flavor. The fermented cod liver oil is definitely on the side of being not that palatable, but I always find you just need to consume something shortly thereafter to help get that down without it lingering in the back of your throat, the flavor. They do get the fermented cod liver oil in many different flavors, which helps with the taking of it, or you can get it in capsule form, of course. But I do find that the liquid is the best deal for the cost because you're getting a larger volume because it fills up all the spaces that the capsules would leave open in the bottle. So there's those two things used in unison, and then something else I'm going to start doing in much higher quantities. I already use this daily is E3 Live. I'm going to double the quantity that is the recommended dose of 1 tablespoon a day and do 2, which is 1 ounce a day. So I'll be going through a bottle every 2 weeks. I'm going to see how that goes for me. That's probably the most mineral dense food on the planet. It's a algae, blue-green algae that grows in Klamath Lake, Oregon, and it's a volcanic ash. There's a lot of volcanic silt and ash in the lake, at the bottom of the lake from years of being up in the mountains like that, getting exposed to that. And it's also a glacier-fed lake, which has allowed the algae to uptake all these nutrients from the water with such great ease that it's developed this very high mineral and vitamin density. So getting in lots of green plant foods is essential for remineralizing and building bones and teeth. So another factor in there. And yeah, consider that. I've got links below for all of these things that I'm talking about listed below this video in the drop-down menu. Another great thing that I've talked about in the other series, that this is sort of a continuation of, but I'll mention again, is colostrum. So this would fit in the category of dairy foods that are building to the teeth and bones. So Thrival's colostrum, I've been super dosing 2 tablespoons or so a day of this. I just found it very sustaining to my energy levels. And of course the IGF-1 levels are great for rebuilding tissue. If you have gum issues, if you have any sort of issues with your teeth that are more to do with the soft tissues, it's going to be great for reversing those issues when you cut out the sugars as well in combination with that. And it's also very healing to the gut, and it's going to optimize your digestion of all these things to absorb everything that you're consuming and make the most of your investments in these products and wonderful teeth-building foods. If you want to learn more about E3 Live, you can check out this video here. It's a video I did not too long ago on the more broad-ranging effects of this amazing superfood. There's a lot more to it than just teeth health and bone health. In fact, that's probably one of the more minor sides of it, but you've got all sorts of unique properties of boosting brain activity, detoxification, as well as releasing stem cells from the bone marrow and enhancing whole body tissue regeneration. some of the non-dietary, non-supplemental strategies that you can implement to help improve your dental health and will be part of this protocol that I'm going to be doing. I mean, I already brush and floss my teeth, so that essentially is already covered for me, but definitely paying more attention to this and making sure I do it twice daily, every single day. So flossing has been actually proven to add up to 6.4 years onto your life. So that's with flossing twice daily. So bacteria that grows on food that's caught between your teeth, it poses greater health risk than the bacteria on the surfaces in terms of creating cavities, but also getting into your bloodstream and getting into the arteries and veins that lead to the heart and can cause blockages there and thus cause potential for heart attack, which has nothing to do with diet, it just has to do with the bacteria. So removing that through flossing twice daily is going to minimize the impact of that on your cardiovascular system. But also, teeth health, you need to be doing those things twice a day. Not necessarily right when you wake up. My preference is to brush my teeth when I wake up, floss after my first meal, and then of course floss and brush at the end of the day after I finished eating as well. And that just helps keep your breath fresh, helps prevent cavities, helps prevent dental decay, and you want to be able to do it in a way that's gentle enough that you're not causing too much irritation on the gums, which can cause receding gums. So always be brushing down and away from your teeth, never up, never too vigorously all over the place. And that's some important things to keep in mind. The other thing, which I kind of hinted at the start of the video, is clacking the teeth. It's an ancient Chinese practice to bring blood flow to the microcapillaries, or tubules that run throughout all the teeth. And it's said that there's enough of these little tiny tunnels that transport minerals to the teeth to stretch from where you're standing right now all the way to the moon, and perhaps even back, I'm not sure. But that's something that Ramiel Nagel talks about, that these tubules that are in the teeth actually transport these minerals and vitamins to the teeth, which is what rebuilds them. So if you're clogging your teeth up with glycerin-based products, that's a big problem because you're not remineralizing the outside edge, and you're not remineralizing from the outside from the foods you're eating as well. So making sure you don't have toothpaste that has glycerin listed in the ingredients is a big factor in this. I personally just use a mixture of neem oil with essential oils, and I put 1 drop of this stuff on my toothbrush with a couple drops of Dr. Bronner's soap just to get it sudsing up a bit. And the essential oils are a blend of cinnamon, peppermint, there's some thyme in there, and a few others, and they're all essential oils that are safe for internal use. I would not recommend using anything like eucalyptus that is toxic when taken internally. So if you just stay focused on spices that you would use in your culinary cooking, those are safe to use as essential oils in making your own sort of tooth serum that you put on your toothbrush. Clove, another one is of course cardamom, those are all in here as well. You want to go easy on the cinnamon too, because too much of that can be too harsh on the tongue. It can actually kill off too much bacteria in your mouth, because you need to have a certain amount of healthy bacteria in your mouth as well. And so I just have basically about that much essential oil, with the rest being neem as almost like a carrier for those essential oils. And neem has wonderful alkalizing effects to the mouth and is wonderful for oral health as well. But it's still so concentrated that I use only 1 single drop on my toothbrush at a time. And again, I'm brushing downwards, not being too vigorous, just using enough to really get that clean feeling. And the flossing is the biggest key for getting in between the teeth, of course. I started talking about it, but kind of sidetracked there. Clacking the teeth, just lightly tapping them, helps bring blood flow, and is said to be a Jing and kidney building exercise done by the ancient Chinese Taoists. So if you have any sort of practice, whether it's exercise or meditation, this is ideally done with a yoga practice or meditation practice. You just take some time to do sets of 9 or 18 of these clacks or taps, and do a certain number of sets of them. So maybe you do 18 taps in 3 different sets with taking a break in between. You don't want to do it too hard, that's obviously causing any pain, or you don't want to chip a tooth. It's just very light, it's just bringing basically your awareness to that area. And what I've found is that it actually straightens my teeth a little bit. So over time, particularly stress, I notice very vague changes in my jaw and how my teeth fit together. So if you bite down and you feel your jaw and you feel it's uneven, try doing these taps or clacks, whatever you want to call it. And you might start to find that you start to get a more even bite that starts happening. And having been someone who's had way too much dental work done in my history as a younger kid, I definitely want to be taking very good care of my teeth, and this is just another thing that I've added in on a regular basis to help maintain this oral health and have it keep going for all time. So again, this is very much a regeneration and rebuilding type approach I'm taking, or protocol, and yeah, it should be interesting to report the effects of that about 1 month from now. So with that, leave your comments below, whether you're guessing for the rhythm of that song I was doing on my teeth, or let me know what you think of everything I'm talking about in this video, your experiences with this kind of approach for your dental health, whether you had dental problems from following a certain type of diet, what you did to help reverse that, or if you're looking for help reversing that. And then also check out the links below of everything I talked about in this video, as well as looking up at the consults. If you're having issues with anything, we can always talk about that and help you get on your way to making some lifestyle improvements to help that out. Like and favorite the video, subscribe if you haven't done that, and with that, take care and embrace life without limits.